Today we are going to be using geometry facts that you should know from your 7th and 8th grade math classes in order to help us come up with an equation we could use to find the value of the missing piece. So normally it'll be what is the variable equal to so that this statement will be true. So let's go ahead and jump in and try a couple. So first concept we're looking at is midpoint. And midpoint is just a fancy way of saying the middle. So B is the middle of this problem. So I can say that this left-hand side and this right-hand side, if that's the middle, I would be able to say that they are equal to each other. And once I have set them equal, then I can just go ahead and solve for x. So I will subtract 6x so that the variables are on the same side. I will subtract 8. And then I will divide by -4. And so I get x equals 9. And in this case, they just want to know what x is, find the value of x, so I found it. If they asked me to find out how long that piece was, then I would just plug in 9 for x to find out how long AB is. And once I know how long AB is, I also know how long BC is. Okay, another example, we've got our isosceles triangle. So remember from 7th grade math, isosceles triangles just means that these two sides are the same length, but it also means that these two angles are the same measurement. So if that angle is 7A, I also know this angle is 7A. And then I know that all triangles, so the sum of the angles of a triangle will always equal 180 degrees. So now I can go through and I can say, okay, 7A plus 7A plus 4A equals 180 degrees. And now I'm going to go ahead and combine my like terms and solve. So that will be 18A equals 180 degrees. Divide by 18. So A is going to equal 10. And again, it just says find the value of A. If I wanted to know how big it was, I would just plug it in. 7 times 10 is 70. So I know that those two congruent angles are 70. I know my top acute angle is 40 degrees. So that's what we can do once we find that missing one. All right, let's go and look at a couple more. So the next one, vertical angles. Okay, so vertical angles, we know from 7th grade math that vertical angles are congruent. So I'm just going to say that x plus 16 equals 4x minus 5. And then again, I'm just going to go ahead and solve for x. So I will subtract 3x. That gives me -2x plus 16 equals -5. Subtract 16. So then -2x equals, -3x. Copy your handwriting, Mrs. Stroll. -3x equals -21. Divide by -3. So I get x is 7. And again, it just says find the value of x. If I wanted to know how big the angle was, then I could just go ahead and plug the 7 in. Okay, corresponding angles. This is one of Mrs. Stroll's favorites. So corresponding angles are always when we have two parallel lines. So we would have to know that those two lines are parallel. And then we have what's called a transversal. So a transversal comes and cuts the two parallel lines. And so the angles created, we end up with what's called corresponding angles. So this angle in the upper right-hand corner of the top line and this angle in the upper right-hand corner of the bottom line, those are called corresponding angles, and we know that those two angles are what we call congruent. So 2x minus 45 would equal x plus 30. And then we're just going to go ahead and solve. So subtract x minus 45 equals 30. Add 45 to both sides. X equals 75. So that would be the value of x. Now, here's what's cool. We can take some other vocab words and start to fill in. So we know that these two are vertical angles, so we know they're congruent. We know these two are vertical angles, so we know they're congruent. And then the same thing would happen. We know these two angles are supplementary. They make 180. So whatever the green one is, we could just subtract from 180. Once we find that angle, we also know that angle. These angles are vertical and these angles are vertical. So that's what I think is so cool about corresponding, is literally once we find one angle measurement, we can figure out all the other angle measurements in the entire picture. So to me, that's a really cool puzzle that just falls into place. All right, last two, we're coming back to this whole idea that the three angles of a triangle add up to 180. That is called the triangle sum theorem. And now we're just going to use that. And then when we see this little right angle here, that little box, we know that's saying, okay, that equals 90 degrees. So if Mrs. Stroll knows I've already used up 90 degrees, then honestly, I would just say, okay, then I know these two angles will make up the other 90 degrees. So when I write my equation, I'm just going to combine my like terms. So 7x plus 6 equals 90. The other option would be to do 7x plus 6 plus 90 equals 180. But again, I already know that there's nothing that can change with this top angle. It's already 90, and that means I know that these two angles have to make up the other 90. So I'm just going to stick with that. From there, you would subtract 6. 7x is 84. Then you would divide by 7. So x would be 12. And again, it just wants to know what is x. It's not asking how big is the angle. So you're done. If they wanted to know how big the angle is, you would just plug it in. So you would know this angle is 25, because 2 times 12 is 24, plus 1 is 25. So that's kind of how that would work. All right, last one, we have triangles. So again, we know that this triangle has to add all the way up to 180. We already know that this angle is 90 degrees. And we already know that this upper angle is 3x plus 12. So then I have this angle right here, 4x plus 8. And I know that this bottom angle down here, those are vertical. So now I know that angle. And so once I have all three angles, I'm ready to write my equation. Again, I'm going to set it equal to 90 because I already know that 90's been used up. 3 and 4 is going to give me 7x. 12 and 8 gives me 20. So then from there, I'm going to subtract 20. 7x equals 70. Divide by 7. And so now I know x is 10. All right, that was just a review of how we could take geometry facts we should already know. We could use that to help us write equations, and then we could take our ability to write equations to find the value of that unknown piece, the x. Hopefully that helps with today's lesson.